uh, two for you, and then three Pacific, right?
Yeah. All right, there we go. Now I'm recording. Now I can share my screen. All right. Well, welcome. My name is Samantha Brewer. I'm the Volunteer Engagement Coordinator with the USA National Phenology Network. And we're here for our Redbud training webinar. I like to do really interactive webinars. So I will say there's QR codes. So if you have a phone, like have your phone ready so that you can so that you can have your camera up to do QR codes. And also take a moment to find the chat button and open up that chat button and say hello and let us know where you're from. I'm going to have a lot of chat engagement with my presentation. To me, I have a really difficult time just like talking for an hour. Well, no, I have an easy time talking for an hour, but without like actually getting to interact with you guys. Like that's my favorite part is actually interacting with you guys. So I'm going to ask for a lot of interaction. So yeah, go ahead and open up that chat button. Just let us know where you're visiting from. And I'm here with Jorge Santiago Blay from
Hello.
the National Museum of Natural History. And Jorge, do you want to say hi?
Hi, and apologies in advance. My camera is acting up, but I am not AI, I am real. And I am speaking today from beautiful York in southern Pennsylvania. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So today what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about citizen science, we're going to talk about redbuds, we're going to talk about the Redbud Phenology Project, and we're going to talk about how all of you can participate in this project, collect data so that researchers can learn more about redbuds, and yeah, we'll learn a little bit about the data that we've been collecting for several years as well. All right. So to start us off, though, once again, I like to do a lot of engagement. And so right now I am in Tucson, Arizona, and we have a hard freeze warning because it's like not a hard freeze warning, I guess, but we have all these freeze warnings I'm getting on my phone, and I'm just kind of done with that. We just had like several weeks of like 72 degrees, which was a really, really warm winter. And now we're at freezing, and I was really liking the 72 degrees. So right now, my brain is very much in when's it going to be spring again? And for me, what I look forward to in the spring is I actually studied birds when I was in school. I love birds. But my favorite thing about spring in Tucson is when all the little herptiles come out. So all the little lizards start coming out and you can see them scurrying around. Eventually we'll get lizard baby season and then you see tiny lizards running around. But springtime, seeing the lizards and the rattlesnakes is one of my favorite things. So go ahead and put in the chat. What are you right now it's winter. There's a lot of storms going on in the United States. There's a lot of craziness going on in California. I hope anyone joining us from California is really safe. Or anyone even going in the storms is really safe. But for a moment, what are you looking forward to for this spring? And I'm opening up my chat. Oh man, North Carolina, Maryland, Texas. Oh man, a lot of Indiana. Hello, everybody. All right, but for spring, go ahead and open up that chat. What are you looking forward to in the spring? We're just taking a moment. We're forgetting it's wintertime in this like, yeah, warmer weather in general. I think that would be fantastic. I would love some rain. We had a really dry winter here in Tucson. Oh, creating a better compost setup. I like that. My daughter, my youngest daughter, recently joined 4-H, and we don't have like any room for livestock. We can't have any animals outside, and most 4-H animals like you need to be outside. But we found out pigeons, you can keep like a couple pigeons indoors. So we have this whole pigeon setup indoors, and she has to clean out their cage every week. And we've been um, composting the cage cleany stuff. I guess, the poo, right? We've been composting the poo, and so we're gonna plant that later this year and see if that turns out. Oh, I love seeing the bulbs coming up. Rewilding, oh, with Indiana wildflowers. I love that. Witch hazel. I love witch hazel. I finally saw witch hazel I'm here in Tucson. We don't have witch hazel. I finally saw witch hazel a couple years ago for the first time, and I see what the big deal is. Like at first I was like, yeah, that's kind of cool. But man, when you see a witch hazel in person, it's like, oh, that's why witch hazels are a big deal. They're freaking awesome. Oh, and Rhode Island. Well, welcome. Welcome everybody. We're really glad to have you here. I'm excited to talk redbuds, phenology, and science with you guys. So we're going to talk a little bit about phenology in general. I've been using that word a lot. Some of you are familiar with the word phenology. For some of you, you're like, you keep saying this word and I don't know what it means. I'll tell you a little bit about what it means and why it's important. We're going to talk about citizen science in general. And I use the term citizen science. I'll talk about that more in general. It's also called community science or volunteer science, but whatever it is that's got people going outside collecting data, that's what's going to be really important. We're going to talk about the USA National Phenology Network and Nature's Notebook. We're going to talk about Jorge's Redbud Phenology Project. And we're going to talk about how you can participate. We'll do a little bit of Nature's Notebook training and teach you how to collect data and get you started with collecting data on seasonal changes of redbuds. So first of all, though, what is phenology? So phenology, it's an ology, right? So biology is the study of life. Ecology is the study of life and how it interacts with its environment. And then phenology, though, is kind of adding an extra layer to that, where you're also looking at time and how plants and animals change through time, right? So right now it's wintertime. A lot of leaves are, or a lot of trees are bare right now. And think about all my little herptiles here in Tucson. They're all usually resting somewhere. I did a little yard work the other week and I found a little sleeping lizard and I was like, sorry, guy. I just like put that part back and I was like, I'll just leave that part for the spring. Um, but it's how plants and animals change with the seasons. And plants and animals don't change with the seasons because they look at a calendar, right? It's not like the flowers are going to be like, okay, it's the first day of spring, and so now it's time for me to open, right? Plants and animals use the cues of what's around them, right? The climate around them, the temperature, maybe average rainfall, maybe how many days it's been light or how long it's light. But they have cues from their environment to kind of tell them when it's time to bloom, when it's time to breed, when it's time to produce fruits, and how quickly, right? How quickly those changes happen as well can all be dependent on temperature, light, water availability, things like that. So phenology is studying those cyclical life cycles of plants and animals, and the environmental factors that affect when they do their things. And what's really nice about phenology is it's a great way for us to look at ecology and look at biology and look at plants and animals and how the changing seasons affect the timing of when plants are going to leaf out or when flowers are going to bloom or when animals are going to go through their life stages and how they respond to climate change. Because when you have these crazy winters where you have really warm winters and then you have maybe a freeze, an unexpected freeze, because the Earth's tilt hasn't changed. It's just the temperature that and the climate that's changing. Um, how climate change affects the timing of these various life cycles. And it's not just the timing of when things will flower and fruit, but you want to think about the ecology too, right? Are plants and animals using the same cues? Are they using different cues? How, if one plant leaves out earlier than usual, is it going to prevent other plants from getting sunlight because the one has leafed out earlier than it usually does? So what's really great about being able to participate in the scientific process and studying phenology is you get to be a part of tracking those changes of plants and animals, especially year after year after year, and potentially seeing how climate change affects the ecology of these different species. And phenology, of course, is part of culture too, right? I always like to put in a little bit of culture with phenology because us humans, like we really are tied to nature, right? We're tied to the natural world around us. We're tied to the places that we inhabit. And we have multiple celebrations that occur with, like cherry blossom festivals, right? Or when it's time to harvest, or when the fish are coming in, right? Um, Human survival throughout the millennia has been tied to our ability to track the different life stages of plants and animals for our survival. And we depend on them, right? We depend on them for being able to, eat or have our ties to home. And so even if you live in a city, cities often have plants and animals around them too, right? So even when you may not feel like you're necessarily tied to nature if you're in a city area, nature is still there around you. It's really neat when you can stop and slow down and pay attention to that, and connect with your natural environment. But it's not just, like, hey, like this is important to us and it's nice to like connect with nature, right? There's a lot of scientific applications of phenology as well, right? Monarchs are going through major declines, right? And so looking at monarchs and milkweed and when milkweeds bloom and when nectar is available for them can help researchers build habitat and learn how to preserve them. Here in Arizona, we have lots of cactus and agaves. They're really important for migrating bat species. So knowing when the cactus and agave are blooming knows when there's nectar available for migrating bat species. Pest control as well, right? So looking at bark beetles or spotted lanternflies and their phenology and the phenology of plants around them and how they affect each other. And then, of course, right, with humans, allergies, allergy season, when you have changes in climate and changes in the length of seasons, it can affect allergies and when you experience this allergies and how long you experience allergies. So there's a lot of ways that it's not just like, oh, it's really neat to know when the plants and animals are blooming or going through the life stages. But there's a lot of really practical applications that we can use phenology or use the knowledge that we gain to be able to help people, help animals, help plants, and learn more about the natural world. Right. But with phenology, there are a lot of ways that you can study phenology, right? You can actually look at satellite data and you can look at like greenness of the planet, and you can actually see when plants start to leaf out and when the leaves go away. You can use aerial photos to look at like what's kind of going on with phenology. But really with phenology, and this is not just in the United States, but in places like Australia and in Europe and in China. Citizen people, it's mostly people on the ground who are documenting these seasonal changes as how we're able to best learn and understand um, what changes are happening and how it affects these plants and animals. It's from people on the ground actually looking at plants and paying attention and documenting those changes week after week after week, and being able to help scientists understand where those changes are coming from. So citizen science in general is defined as scientific research that's conducted in whole or in part by amateur and non-professional scientists, right? So to study phenology, to study seasonal changes, you don't need a fancy degree, right? You don't need to have this like hardcore understanding of biology and biological processes. Like most people in your neighborhood or your family or your friends or myself, you can go outside, and this is what I like to do when I do my Nature's Notebook observations. I have a couple of like milkweed plants in my yard, and I just go outside and I drink my coffee and I watch my milkweed. I look for if there's any caterpillars. I see if it's blooming or when it's budding. But you can go out, and I love it because I move really fast and I'm really trying to talk slowly because I am very aware that I talk very quickly. But my life goes really fast. So it's a nice way to make me just stop and be present in nature for like 10 minutes. And what I like about it too is I don't feel like I'm just like, oh my gosh, I just spent 10 minutes looking at a tree. But I spent 10 minutes looking at a tree, getting to know the personality of my tree, seeing the little bugs on my tree, and also collecting data so that the time I'm spending is also helpful for researchers to be able to understand monarch and milkweed phenology in Arizona. Some people, there's some debate about calling it citizen science. It's also known as crowd science, crowdsourcing science, civic monitoring, volunteering monitoring. Basically, if you've got people going outside and collecting data, you're doing science together as a community. I often use the term citizen science because there's a lot of federal grants that actually require you use the word citizen science when you're getting funding. And so that's why I will use that term, is just to like yes, like it can be problematic, but these are the terms to um, help help people gain funding to continue to do their projects. it's been known by other names throughout history, right? So it's not just like collecting data, right? If you look back at cherry blossoms, you can actually we've had research or not we've had researchers, but researchers have actually looked at the phenology of cherry blossoms in China and Japan, and part of the data that they use to look at how the phonology has changed is actually looking at poems and stories and notes from just people who were writing things hundreds or thousands of years ago. So we actually have like several hundred years of data looking at cherry blossoms and how they've changed through the years. Here in the United States, there's a New York Phenology Project where we have data that was collected by farmers before the Civil War. In New York, these farmers were collecting really good climate data and really good plant phenology data. I don't remember the story of who found it, but someone found that this book like squirreled away in the Smithsonian. And so in New York, they actually collected data with Nature's Notebook, and they were able to see that many of the plants that they were collecting data on 200 years ago, you can actually see that shift in phenology where they're actually leafing out and blooming between 6 days and 2 weeks earlier than they were 200 years ago. So whenever you get these long-term phenology data, it's really cool because you can really actually see how the timing and climate has shifted through many, many years. Hunting journals also, like people doing hunting journal or hunters, like, they would put journals of when they would notice which animals were plentiful. Thomas Jefferson was, he would go out every morning and, write down when the spring croakers were first starting or the spring peepers, excuse me, spring peepers, when the spring peepers first started calling. Um, so there's a long history of this, but it hasn't always been um super popular, right? It's usually if you're super wealthy and you have the means to like be able to go collect data and keep those notebooks. And then not only that, but have those notebooks be found 200 years later, right? Not everyone's notebook of their phenology observations get found unless you were like really rich and really known for documenting things. However, in the 1990s, we had a huge burst in programs for citizen science. And it's not just phenology, right? But like anything. Honestly, there's thousands of different citizen science projects, but why? Who can tell me? All right, we're going to go back in the chat. I'm going to wake you up again because I'm rambling a little bit. Right, back in the chat. Why? Why in the 90s did we see the sudden explosion in citizen science? I realize some of you weren't born in there, maybe? I just realized. So my kids, whenever I talk about it, they're like, "Oh, did you have color pictures in the 1900s?" I'm like, "Yes, you have to talk to your grandma if you want to talk about black and white pictures." Okay? My life was entirely in color. Yeah, social media, AOL, the internet, right? With the internet, we love the internet and we hate the internet. We love and hate the internet, right? We have the internet, and I'm able to talk to you guys right now about citizen science so that more people can participate in citizen science because we have the internet, right? So a lot of really, scary things happen with the internet, but oh my gosh, there are so many neat, wonderful things that happen in the internet because I can talk to all of you all across the United States. I saw Rhode Island in the chat, right? I'm here in Tucson, Arizona. You're all the way over there in Rhode Island, and we're here talking about phenology and redbuds and how we're going to like collect data. So I think that's one of the greatest things about the internet is so many more people are able to participate in the scientific process. And what has been found too is basically, right, there you have scientists, like traditionally you think about scientists in their labs, right? And you'll have the photo ops where they're wearing their lab coat and their goggles, even though they're looking at a tree and it's like, stock photos. But really, most people can go out and with a little bit of training say like, yes, I see leaves or flowers. And it's been found that the data collected by volunteers generally has been found as reliable as the data collected by professionals. So most people you're like, no, this is something I'm interested in. This is something I care about. Whatever that project is, you probably can participate and collect data and help scientists learn more. So here from the National Phenology Network. The National Phenology Network, where our organization lives here in Tucson, Arizona at the University of Arizona. But we have volunteers all across the United States. We have thousands of volunteers across the United States who have been collecting phenology data. Some of them have been collecting phenology data for as long as we've been around, for 15 years. We have a few observers who've been collecting for 15 years. And some of you have been collecting with us for several years, and some of you are brand new to this. And so welcome to the network for those of you who are new. But our mission is to empower people to understand nature's rhythms so that we can all adapt to this changing world around us, right? When you connect with nature and when you're able to like collect data and see those changes, and especially seeing those changes in your world and in your community, and being able to collect all that data together, it helps all of us connect with nature on that kind of individual level, and also on a larger kind of scientific level, be able to learn from the data that you're observing and you're collecting. And this is a map showing some of our showing where people across the United States have been collecting data with Nature's Notebook. There's over 30 million phenology records that have been collected with our program. We have over 3,000 active observers, over 200 local phenology programs, and there have been over 160 peer-reviewed publications that have been printed using data collected in Nature's Notebook. So sometimes it's like when I'm out there in the morning drinking my coffee and looking at my milkweed, it kind of feels like, okay, here's my one data point here with my one milkweed. Like, what does that matter? But when you look at the whole puzzle and you look at the whole picture as a whole, every person at every site who's able to collect data is is helping us with that knowledge and helping us learn and grow and be able to get more reliable information. And so, but that's a lot of Nature's Notebook in general. We're here to talk about redbuds because I'm sure you're all fans of redbuds. And maybe some of you don't know what a redbud is. I live here in Tucson, Arizona. I did not know what a redbud is when I first started, but it turns out at the U of A, oh, I should have put a picture. At the U of A, our arboretum had a redbud. So I have a redbud that I get to like also participate in, and that's really exciting. So I'm going to pass it along to Jorge, though. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Jorge, I'll go ahead and let you share your screen, and why don't you talk a little bit about the Redbud Phenology Project?
Okay. Um, First of all, let me make sure that I'm sharing my screen. Hopefully I am. Can all of you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So that's our backyard, and I give you my word that to the left of this area here that I am pointing, we have a redbud. So homework for me, photograph, the garden with the redbud. Okay. So the other thing I want to say right away is to express my apologies for not having my camera working. It may turn on suddenly, but it has been very iffy as of late. Okay, so I got into this project somewhere towards the end of 2018 and 2019 when I was looking for a project to do in collaboration with undergraduates at Penn State, York, and a person very, very dear to me, whom I consider a friend, Mr. Sam Drogi from U.S. Geological Survey. He's an expert on bees, suggested to combine bee research with redbud research, which I have done ever since. Just to give you a punchline on the bees, and this will be the only thing I will say about bees. In this area, uh, about 20-minute drive from home here in York, Pennsylvania, we have been following the redbuds and the bees, and this is an area of about from yard 20 in U.S. Football to the goal line. On that small area, we have found 78 species of bees. Of course, not all of them are pollinators of redbud, and counting. Heavens knows we may get to close to 90 species in this very small place. So, anyways, since about year 2023 to 2024, no, about 2023, all of these colleagues of mine and I have been working on a chapter for the USDA Silvex of North America manual. We submitted a chapter on Redbud a few months ago, and it's currently under a revision. Um, so why are we doing this besides being curious about the bees and curious about biology in general? Well, it turns out that redbud is one of the most popular trees commercially in the USA, and its commerce involves billions of dollars. Um, so there is money involved here. Um, the the second reason is that as a consequence of that interest in a redbud, very simply because it's a small, beautiful tree, it's one of the earlier flowering ones. We have a potential for the exportation of pests to other parts of the world, including to other species of cerces of redbuds that exist in other parts of the world. Um, More reasons why this is important is because we wonder whether redbuds are just another bellwether for climate change. And finally, we have fundamental biological questions like, for example, there is the very cherished belief that redbuds, like some oaks, go through periods of great production of fruits, which are also called legumes or seed pods, and then other periods of time when there are very, very few of those pods produced. We want to know whether that's sort of, genetic, in other words, part of their machinery, or whether it is influenced by, by the weather. Okay, as I just hinted, red Eastern North America redbuds are very popular trees. Roughly, this area that I am pointing out is the area where they are native to, meaning more or less, well, obviously Eastern USA, a little bit of Canada, and they have been expanding west and um, numerous numerous localities where they are not native to, but they serve as ornamentals, and then all over the world. And these are not all of the all of the localities. Um, Redbuds, being so economically important and so beautiful, have been the subject of an enormous amount of work to develop cultivars. So remember, a variety is something that exists out in nature without the intervention of humans, as far as we know. Whereas a cultivar is a variant that has been created by the hand of humans. And there are cultivars that change in their architecture from round to columnar, or from being sort of bushy to having the branches pointing down like a cascade. Leaf color can vary, as far as I have seen, from burgundy all through, of course, the regular green color to yellow, as shown here, for example. And flower color can vary from pink even magenta, all the way to white. Um, okay, punchline on this particular slide, which I realize can maybe barely be seen the color, is that perhaps with the projected climate warming, there will not be so much of a difference in the overall distribution of redbuds in the United States. Remember, that's just modeling. Um, Redbuds are not just part of the modern world, as so to speak. They have been around for millions of years, and they are known from the fossil record as well. How can redbuds be propagated? There are two fundamental ways, of course. One is asexual reproduction, just like when we go to our parents and ask them for a cutting, that's asexual reproduction, and several species of redbuds have been propagated to make sure that the rootstock, which of course is the uh, underground part of the of the tree, where the roots are resistant to soil pathogens. And then on top, we can put the scion, SCION, for whatever variety of or a species of redbud we may be a fan of. Um, we in the lab have, with the help of undergraduates, of which, as you can sense, I'm very fond of, have increased the likelihood of reproduction through seeds, and sexual reproduction tends to be associated with the presence of seeds. Another of our projects is to ask the question, well, is it true what someone said that wind can pollinate redbuds? And I have been doing this experiment for 4 years. I think we have bagged about 50 or so branches, total 10 to 20 every year. And the answer is, with one exception of one seed pod in one of my bags, um, absolutely not. And what this means is that the wind can go through through the bags, through those, organza bags, but the insects cannot. So as a consequence, uh, when we remove the organza bags, or very simply, when we just take a look at the areas of the tree without the organza bags, there are oodles and oodles and oodles of seed pods. So as shown here, okay, for example, here is a photograph of our redbud in the fall. Next year I should have another one. So another question that we are asking is, what animals may feed on the seed pods, especially in the winter, where there are not many sources of food available. And here is another photo of our redbud. We have that. I will try to get a better one. On occasion, birds have been observed by our trail cameras to pick up the seed pods. We have seen squirrels here, and I don't know if you can see a white-tailed deer right here, actually captured in flagrante delicto, eating the redbud seed. So any observation that you could send us, especially with photographs of animals eating the seed pods, that would be fantastic. Greatly appreciated. Another question that we have is, okay, how far away can the wind transport the seed pods? And this is actually our setup in York County, Pennsylvania. This is the Richard Nixon Park, and this is the area that we have been investigating. Very small area, full of seed pods when this photograph was taken. So we use this instrument here, which many of you, especially the ladies, will recognize as a hair blower. Unfortunately, you cannot see my photograph, but I can give you my word that I have no need for that instrument. So we very simply have a setup shown on this panel to the left, where we would measure the wind speed of the hair blower, and very simply, dispense on seed pods. And the answer is that, well, if the wind speed is really, really, really large, like 35 kilometers an hour, they will be able to disperse, oh, maybe 10 or so, 10 or so, meters, one, ballpark 100 centimeters. But usually in the forest, the wind speeds are very low in this order here, and they would just move at most, typically about half, about, half a meter. So these things very likely disperse thanks to animals. Wind doesn't do a heck of a lot. Okay, what animals feed or use redbuds? Well, we have the redbud seed beetle, which makes these little holes when it wants to emerge, unless there is a wasp that have attacked them, in which case not the beetle will, the beetle will not emerge, but it would be a tiny, tiny, tiny wasp. In this image here, we can see how tiny the eggs of the redbud seed beetle are. It's just zero point 0.3 millimeters long, tiny, tiny, tiny. These very much look like a leaf cut in B, these kind of circular holes. They use the leaves to um, cover their nest. Um, uh, we have frass from ambrosia beetles. Okay. Uh, what else is using redbud? We have verticillium wilt, which is caused by a fungus in the genus verticillium. So there is no cure for this fungal disease. Redbuds typically last 25 to 30 years, but I have seen and known of redbuds that last much, much longer than just 25 to 30 years. Another one, relatively recently discovered about 5 or so years ago, vascular streak dieback, caused by yet another fungus, and unfortunately, again, no cure. Other services besides being very beautiful and one of the earlier flowering trees, some people make redbud jelly, and I do not know if it is sweet, because my suspicion is that the main ingredient is sugar. Some people, and this is point number two, boil and saute them. I have never tried this, and it's kind of like edamame. The flowers are eaten by children of some native people, sort of like candy. In Western North America, and we are writing another paper in this in the subject of native names and uses of redbud. So if you have information, or if you yourself have uses, please, please, please email me. But on Western United States, the species of redbud prevalent is Cercis occidentalis, and the branches are used to make baskets. And then redbuds, especially the eastern redbud, there are many reports that are used as medicine against numerous conditions by some of the native peoples. And I want to say that I haven't seen a single article on this subject of the effectiveness of the medicines obtained from Redbud in the peer review literature. So I'm basically selling it to you as as it has been sold to me. Any questions, comments, maybe at the end of this presentation, or you can always email me at blyj, B as in boy, LAYJ, at PSU, that stands for Penn State University.edu, and my other email is very similar, blyj at SI, that stands for Smithsonian Institution, .edu. Thank you.
Yay, thank you, Jorge.
No
I,
problem.
that's great. I love
Yeah.
this year you have the new ones with like all the different variations. That slide was new to me. I really liked that one.
Yeah, and I completely forgot to say that worldwide, the consensus is that there are 10 species of redbud in the world. Four of them, if I remember correctly, are native to China, but we can here in the US, either by seed or directly the plants, we can get probably 5 or 6 of them, fairly, some more easy, some easy than others. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right. It is 11:41, and usually by this time, I know when I do webinars, this is about the time where my brain zones out a little bit. So I'm going to encourage all of you to take a stretch because once again, I like to do engaging webinars. And so I know I can't see you all, but really stand up for a second, stretch your arms, maybe look outside the window. I actually have Anna's hummingbird at my hummingbird feeder right now, right? Go look at the window for just like a second because we're about to get into like the super engaging part of the talk. So I'm gonna let you all stretch. I can see some of you not stretching. I know some of you have your cameras off, but some of you have your cameras on. Yeah, I'm calling you out. I don't really care. You don't have to stretch, but I encourage you all to stretch. All right. So collecting data then, right? So how can you participate in the Redbud Phenology Project? Help us learn a little bit more about Redbud phenology or some of, just part of all these many, many Redbud projects that are going on. Is basically with Nature's Notebook is you go outside, right? You find a redbud tree. Like you've got to, if you're going to observe redbuds, you got to like find a redbud tree, right? So find a redbud tree if you haven't done so already. And it should be a redbud tree that you can visit frequently, like, right? Because when you're talking about phenology and you're talking about when plants and animals change, you want to be able to capture those periods of time when things change, right? So if you go out to your redbuds today, like we're going to pretend I have a redbud tree outside, right? If I looked at a redbud tree today, there would be like nothing on it. It would look like a stick in the ground, right? I'm sure a very lovely stick, but it would be a stick in the ground, right? But in the next few weeks, if I keep going to my redbud tree every weeks, I'm going to start seeing changes, right? So right now I'd go out and I'd say, no, I don't see anything on my redbud tree. But if I go out every week and this week I say, no, there's nothing on my redbud tree. Next week, yes, there's something on my redbud tree. Then researchers know that within this week period, this is when the red buds started blooming, and here's the climate data attached to it, and you can start to kind of document when those changes are happening and what's going on in the world when they change. So basically, I'd have my little red bud in Nature's Notebook. I'd go to my red bud, and if I go out today and I see this, basically I'm just answering the question of, do you see flowers on your red bud tree? Right? So if I went to my red bud tree, go ahead, open up your chat. Do you see flowers? Yes or no on this redbud tree? Oh, good. Oh, y'all are still awake. Yes. Excellent. Perfect. Yep. So I would say yes. Yeah, yeah, yes. I know you're like, oh, obviously yes, right? But oh my gosh. So when I first started with Nature's Notebook, I was like, well, obviously I know what a leaf and a flower is. And then when you get into it, sometimes you go to the trees and you're like, oh, I don't actually know what that is. We'll talk about that in a second, right? But for right now, practice, good. You all, yes, you see flowers. All right. And then you go back, in a couple weeks and you see this, right? So for the flowers, right? Yes or no? Do you see flowers on your redbud tree still? Oh, I'm looking. Do you see flowers on your redbud tree? Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Marcos. Oh, thank you, Elizabeth. Right? See, I do the interactive stuff. All right. So, but yeah, right. Yes, you see flowers. And now, yes, you see leaves, right? Last week, there were no leaves on your tree. This week, okay, I've still got the flowers and now I've got the leaves, right? And then if you go back in a few weeks, right, we're kind of rapidly going, you might start to see fruits, right? You can say, oh, so if you go back in a few weeks, right? Now for this third picture, do you see flowers on that red bud? Yes or no? For the third picture. Yeah, no for the flowers, right? How about leaves on that red bud? I actually don't kind of know. I don't know. It seems this must be a weird one. I don't know. Yeah, but I see no leaves on that last one. But then do you see fruits? And fruits, right? It's always like, oh, is like a tomato a fruit, right? Yeah, biologically, a tomato is a fruit. If it has seeds in it, it's a fruit. So there's like this saying where it's like, knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit, but wisdom is you don't put a potato in or a tomato in a fruit salad, right? So, but for fruits, we're doing science. Yeah, these are fruits. They kind of look like peas, which we also call vegetables,
Hmm.
also fruits.
They are in the same family.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they're like exactly. All right, so but yes, so we go out and say fruits, right? Perfect. And so when we have right now with the Redbud Phenology Project, I think we have 223 sites where people are collecting redbud data all across the United States. This is just showing the eastern redbuds. The western redbuds aren't. Oh no! And my redbud. Oh, because it was fall colored leaves. I did not record calling. I was like, where's my? This is where people recorded the colored leaves and the falling leaves of redbuds in the United States. So one thing that you can look at that I like showing in this map is showing where people all across the United States are collecting data on redbuds. And specifically, this is showing with the triangles. It's when people first recorded ripe fruits, when they first recorded colored leaves, and whoops, when they first recorded falling leaves for red buds. And so, like here in Texas, we've got a square. So you've got colored leaves first start appearing in this red bud tree, actually kind of late springish. Someone was recording, seeing some colored leaves. Ripe fruits, right, really started showing up late summer, early fall. But you can kind of get this neat visual of when people are recording changes and where people are recording changes. This is a great graph. This is showing data that's been collected with Nature's Notebook for the past 2022, 23, and 24 for the Eastern Redbuds fruits and flowers of when people were reporting their first flowers and when people when people were reporting flowers and when people were reporting fruits, right? So the reddish colors here, this is when people were reporting red buds, right? So generally, right, we get a few yeses. That's why we do this webinar so early in the year, because sometimes you might get some of those early yeses around January. February and March, we got peak flowering through these 3 years in April. And then you see people starting to report no for the flowers in April, a little bit in May, and then flowers pretty much gone by June. But then you see in the blue, this is the fruits. And I always love this kind of graph because you're showing like that pollination happening, right? So you have pollination, your flowers blooming, pollination, and then the flowers die off, and then those pollinated it's the ovaries and flowers. Oh my gosh. The pollinated I think it's eggs and ovaries start to form. I'm
Samantha,
getting way into the scientific stuff. Yeah, they start to form the fruits.
Samantha, may
Yeah.
I
Oh,
interject?
please.
Someone asked a question because, nowadays we are doing both the Eastern and the Western redbud. So if you allow me to share my screen,
Oh, sure.
I can try to tell the difference. Um, okay, so I showed this a slide, but didn't emphasize sufficiently, or didn't emphasize at all, the difference. So this one, that's kind of like the shape of a heart. This is Eastern redbud. This is a typical leaf of Eastern redbud. Um, not rounded, kind of semi-elongated, often with an indentation here that makes it look more like a heart. That's in Eastern United States. That's Cercis canadensis, which, by the way, is not very common in Canada. And then this one with the rounder leaf, not so elongated, not so much like the form of a heart, is Cercis occidentalis. And as I put here, sort of a joke, do not ask me why the Western leaf was put on the eastern side of the page, and the eastern one on the western side of the page. But hopefully that will help. Now, in terms of the growth form, typically Eastern red bud is a tree, and in contrast, typically Western red bud is, it's a shrub. Okay. And if you have questions or want the PowerPoint or whatever, just shoot me an email. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. And sorry for the, for the interjection.
No, not at all. I love it. And it is important to note that there are right, there are various varieties of Redbud. For Nature's Notebook, you generally can put in for Eastern and Western Redbuds as the species because the variety gets a little you get a little lost in the weeds there. But anyway, so once again, though, right, like I said, most people, it's like, oh yeah, I can tell what a leaf and a flower is. But sometimes you like go to your redbud tree and it looks like this, and you're like, wait, what am I actually seeing, right? And so with Nature's Notebook, the USA-NPN, we do have specific protocols for definitions of right what defines a flower or a flower bud, what defines a fruit, what defines a leaf, right? Because you'll have these major transitions of like leaves, flowers, and fruits, but you have all these little intermediate breaking leaf buds and closed flowers versus open.
Hello, Mark. How are you?
Oh, and
I
so,
am doing
oh, Jorge,
fine. I
I'm
am
gonna mute you,
now
Jorge.
developing from
Oh,
a
that's funny. All right, there you go. So anyway, back to the chat. So on this one, right, if we're saying like, do you see flowers or flower buds versus open flowers, right? Because the time of, right, it's you're having different kind of life stages when the flower buds are closed versus when the flower buds are open. So with the definitions, for flowers or flower buds, you'll have one or more fresh, open, or unopened flowers on the plant, include flower buds or inflorescences that are swelling or expanding, but do not include those that are tightly closed and not actively growing, which are dormant, right? So when you're collecting data on red buds, if you see them in the bud stage, you can actually say, yes, I do see flowers or flower buds on this tree, right? But then open flowers, right? Open flowers is a different time, right? It's a different kind of reproductive state, right? So you have like developing flowers when the flower buds are closed. When they're open, you have pistils and stamens open. They're ready for all their bees or other pollen, and butterflies and bats and all, all the other bee pollinators and moths, which are M, right? Whatever pollinators you have, there's nectar available and they can be actively pollinating, right? So open flowers is when you have one or more fresh flowers that are open on the plant. They're open when you have the reproductive parts. So if you're looking at your tree and like, wait, are these flowers closed or open, right? If you can see an open flower with the reproductive parts, then you have an open flower. So for this one, right, I would say yes, I see flowers or flower buds, but I would say no, I don't see open flowers. So I'm going to go back to you guys now, right? So then you go back next week, right? And your red bud looks like this, right? And so you can have multiple phenophases happening at the same time. So in the chat, go back to your chat. Do you see flower buds or do you see flowers or flower buds, right? Flowers or flower buds, they're present on your plant, right? Do you see flowers or flower buds on this plant? Yes. Excellent. And in the last one, right, we had no open flowers. And now we have yes open flowers. So that's once again showing like when you go week after week after week, right, and collect data on the red buds, you'll actually capture when are the flowers opening, right? When are the leaves appearing? So yeah, for this one, I would say yes, there's flowers and flower buds. And yes, there's open flowers, right? And then we're also looking at fruits with Redbud Phenology Project, right? So once again, when you're collecting data on fruits, fruits can have various developmental stages, right? You can have unripe fruits, right? If any of you have ever bitten into an unripe fruit, it's often not a pleasant experience, right? And that's because the whole purpose, the whole reason why fruits exist is to disperse seeds, is to like, enclose seeds while they grow and also have some sort of dispersal method, so that animals or wind or whatever is dispersing the fruits as well. So knowing the difference of when there's fruits starting on the tree and when those fruits have actually developed and ripened so that the seeds are ready to disperse is really important. So you want to be able to identify fruits and ripe fruits. So for the Eastern redbuds, the fruit is going to be a pod. It's generally going to change from green to purplish dark brown, and eventually it'll split open to expose the seeds. So in this case, you can say like, yes, I see fruits. Um, Oops, I got this slide a little off. That's okay. Um, but for ripe fruits, I guess I'll have it in the chat, right? Well, I'll do it in the chat. We do see that there's fruits. Now, I'll say the definition for ripe fruits for Cercis canadensis is when they're a deep brown. Like they're going to be generally brown, kind of dryish if they're ripe. So what would you say for ripe fruits for this plant? Yeah, no, right? You see fruits? Yes. Ripe fruits? No. So fruits, yes, ripe fruits, no. And then you might come across this, right? Where you go back next week and you're like, all right, hey, my fruits are turning brown. But then you're like, wait, right? I see some fruits that are definitely ripe and brown. Some of them seem kind of green though. Like, is this fruit actually ripe or not, right? Because the definition is it's when it's turned dark brown, right? But sometimes you get kind of these weird things where you're just not 100% sure, right? But I still want you guys to go ahead and oh, I'm getting, yeah, good. Go ahead and put in the chat if you went out to your redbud tree, right? And you saw this, what would you say for ripe fruits? We all were, yeah, yes and yes, right? Oh, good. You've got yes for ripe fruit. I see no for ripe fruit. I see yes for ripe fruit, right? And I see no for ripe fruit. And the reason I put this in here is because sometimes we get volunteers who get really anxious, right? Because you're entering data, right, that scientists are going to use, and you want to be accurate, right? And you want to give them good data that they're going to be able to use. And the point of this, in that some people put no and some people put yes, is in these transitional phases, it's okay if it's not perfect, because if you have 200 people, right, all contributing data to redbud trees, you're going to still get that average space of when the fruits are ripening, right? And you're going to still get a good idea of the fruits are ripening. But also, one thing that we have in Nature's Notebook is we do give you a question mark option, right? So when you're entering your data in Nature's Notebook and you're saying like, hey, I saw fruits, you can put in a question mark to say, I'm just not sure. And scientists can still use that because they know you were out there. They know you were looking at red buds, and they probably know that you're in a transitional phase if you're not sure or not. And even if you went back next week and you're like, oh no, they're way brown now, like you can fix your data and put in the correct information as well. So that's one of the things I really love about Phenology and Nature's Notebook. It gives you that space to be like, I'm not sure, and I have space to learn if it's ripe or not, right? And so that's one of the things I like about it as well. But embrace the question mark. Nature's Notebook is not meant to be if you are not correct, the data is all wrong, right? Do your best with the information that you have, um, because what you put in is better than if you're like, oh, I'm not going to put anything at all, and then we have nothing at all. So don't be afraid. All right, this is the time. All right, to get your phone. So to get started, oh shoot, I have 2 minutes left. I slowed my talking down way too much. But if you get a chance, if you would like to participate, get your phone out. You can put on your camera on your phone. And if you put your camera at your computer screen, it'll show a little like QR1BE. You can click that picture on your camera screen, oh, which you can't see on mine, but it'll actually open up the Nature's Notebook app, so you can get started either on Android or on iPhone. It'll open up the app where you're able to download the app. Once you download the Nature's Notebook app, you'll be prompted to create an account, and you'll be prompted to create a site. And so the site is going to be like your yard or your park or wherever your redbud is, because you might have 5 redbuds. You might have 1 redbud. I don't really know. But if you have a site with 5 redbuds, you can document all your redbuds. You can document 2 of your redbuds. You can document 1 of your redbuds, right? But you would create a site, and there's different types of sites. There's personal sites for just you, but there's also local phenology programs, and I'll talk about that kind of briefly, where people can get together and collect data as well. And then you add your redbud to your site, and then you just visit your redbud every week, every 2 weeks, as often as you're able, and collect your observations of what you're seeing. Are you seeing leaves, flowers, fruits, anything like that? Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I'm a little over. I'll try to hurry up the rest on this. If you want more information on training, if you want more information about different phenophases, once you create your account with Nature's Notebook, you can go to USA-NPN.org. We have all sorts of resources to help you guys out. We have multiple data collection campaigns with little badges. So you've got a badge when you collect your Redbud Phenology Project data, but there's going to be badges for other data as well. If you have like monarchs, or if you're here in Arizona and you want to collect data on saguaros. And also, if you don't have a Redbud yourself, there are local phenology programs all across the United States where it's generally organizations or schools or arboreta or even Reed Park Zoo here in Tucson has one where you can bring in volunteers or you can volunteer and help collect data on their Redbud trees if you're not able to go very often, but you can search our website and find a local phenology program near you. Also, this is a little bit of self-promotion. We are updating our Nature's Notebook app. We got a grant where we can actually make the app more interactive, easier to use. So we love getting feedback from people on how, like, as we go through the app development process, we're actually going to be asking for feedback from our volunteers because we want to make an app that is really useful for you guys. So if you want to join the participant pool, get every couple months or so get an update of like, hey, which of these works better for you? You can sign up for our participant pool right here. We will have that open throughout the app development process, and everyone who's in the participant pool will get their very own special participant pool badge once we have the new app released. But with that, I just want to say hey, 12:01. I wasn't too bad over time. Thank you so much. I will stick around for questions. I know some of you have got a dip, but I'll stick around for any questions that you guys have. And just thank you all so much for being here. We'll have the webinar available to view probably tomorrow. Is when I should have it because it takes a while for me to like download the thing and then get it uploaded and get it sent and all that. But we'll have this webinar available as well. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me or Jorge and let us know. But thank you all for being here and have hopefully spring comes at a reasonable time for you guys and stay warm. Stay
Thank,
safe.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Samantha, I just sent you an email with, well, excuse me. Now I sent you a, an email with a interesting idea that just
Oh
maybe
dear.
I,
And then so yeah, as soon as this presentation is done, I don't see any questions. But if you have any questions, let us know. And then Jorge got me some work to do. So I guess I'm going to check.
no, 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 no. Yeah,
All right.
yeah. Thank
I'll,
you, Samantha.
yeah, thank you so much. I'll go ahead and stop the recording. All of you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, bye.